So super excited that you're here this morning. Most of the staff is gone today. We're kind of down to the skeleton crew this morning, and that's because Haley, who's our financial manager, she got married yesterday, and Pastor Lisa did the wedding, and she invited all of the staff, but of course all the staff can't go because someone has to turn on the coffee and print the bulletins and all that kind of stuff. So you'll kind of see Dennis and I running around a lot this morning, trying to cover all the bases. And anyway, if we could show the photo of the staff, there's Haley and everybody else. And you'll notice Tammy's not up there. Tammy was in Disneyland this week, so that was great. And Dennis is up there, but he drove back last night. He got in early this morning, and I didn't do anything. I stayed here, and they said, Tyler, this wedding's coming up, and we're all involved, but somebody needs to stay at home. And I said, that's fine. And they said, oh, yeah, and it's up in Door County, which is beautiful and wonderful, I've heard. And they said, oh, yeah, and the topic for the day is jealousy, so, yeah. So fire away. So we're going to do something together this morning. I want you to take a quick look at the front of your bulletin, the redesigned bulletin. You see a blank spot on there where it says sermon notes or something like that. And there should be a pen in the pew, or maybe you brought a pen or a pencil with you. In that blank space, at the very top, I want you to write something that you are jealous of. Or if you're jealous of a person, maybe write that there too. So if you're jealous of, I don't know, if you're jealous of your neighbor's car, write that down. Or don't overthink it. It doesn't have to be very serious. Just what is a thing that you're just sort of like, remotely jealous of? We're all going to do it. This isn't a trick or a trap. You're not going to turn it in. We're not going to announce it it won't be in the bulletin next week. This is between you and God and that piece of paper, and just write something. About once a year, Michelle and I, we go on a date up to Lake Geneva. Have you been to Lake Geneva? Yeah, it's close to here, so that a lot of you probably have been there. And when we go to Lake Geneva, we always do this about the same 3 or 4 things. One of the things we do is we get pizza at this place called Oak Fire, and we have a lot of fun with that. And then after pizza, we get ice cream, because if Lake Geneva has something good other than lakes, it's ice cream. And we do a little bit of shopping, and we go for a walk along the lake. And someone told me earlier this morning they did the whole 22 miles. We don't do that. We don't even count the miles. We just go, has it been about 30 minutes? Okay, let's turn around and go back. But if you've ever done this before, you know that the path goes, you've got the lake on one side, and on the other side, these beautiful homes. I don't think mansion is inappropriate to use here. These homes are impressive. And I was looking at on a website that shows listings of homes. These are multi-million dollar homes. So cool. And so when we do this, we find ourselves asking the same question out loud to one another. We'll say, what do these people do? What do they do to be able to afford this? And they're never home. There's never anybody there. So we figure this must be their second or third house or whatever. What in the world could they do? And if you haven't done this before, let me just show you a few examples of some of these homes is it weird we take pictures of their house? I don't know. I'm assuming some of you have also done this. So yeah, I actually looked at we took this last year, and then I was thumbing through 4 or 5 years ago. We took a picture of the same exact house. I don't know if this is the one or whatever, but this one didn't show correctly. This one has this massive sweeping lawn that comes through. It's amazing. Oh, and here's a little video. And yeah, what in the world do these people do? It's just so awesome. So anyway, so we do that almost every time. And then when the date is over, after we've been kind of gawking at these houses for an hour or so, we make our way back to what I would refer to as our bucket of bolts car. And we drive home to our rat trap house, which is not on the lake. And we eat a pauper's dinner of leftovers. Still haven't painted over. It sounds like I'm exaggerating, but look at this thing. I don't even know who these people are. Well, I know who Michelle is. Obviously, that's Michelle Murphy. But the people in the mural, mediocre lives. And where I'm exaggerating the experience a little bit, but what good has jealousy ever been for me? What good has jealousy ever been for you? Has it ever netted anything positive in your life? We're going to look at our scripture this morning. The passage is 1 Samuel chapter 18, verses 5 through 11. This is what it says. Whatever Saul asked David to do, David did it successfully. So Saul made him a commander over the men of war, an appointment that was welcomed by the people and Saul's officers alike. When the victorious Israelite army was returning home after David had killed the Philistine, women from all the towns of Israel came out to meet King Saul. They sang and danced for joy with tambourines and cymbals. This was their song. Saul has killed his thousands, David his 10,000. This made Saul very angry. What is this? He said. They credit David with 10,000s and me with only thousands. Next, they'll be making him their king. So from that time on, Saul kept a jealous eye on David. The very next day, a tormenting spirit from God overwhelmed Saul, and he began to rave in his house like a madman. And David was playing the harp, as he did each day. But Saul had a spear in his hand. He suddenly hurled it at David, intending to pin him to the wall. So one of the hallmarks of this teaching series that we're doing, talking about meltdowns, is that when we look at these stories, we go, okay, I can relate to that. Like, that feels familiar. Or I've been there before. Who here hasn't felt just sort of anger welling up inside them after feeling betrayed? Who hasn't felt the frustration of doing all the work and getting none of the credit? Or maybe missing out on some great adventure because you had duty or responsibilities elsewhere? Who hasn't felt that sting of jealousy or wish they'd gotten more credit or more praise or more compensation or just had gotten more out of life? So this is all very relatable, at least up until the point that's pictured here. I don't think I've ever been this jealous, get someone with a spear. So yeah, I tend to cut the line at attempted murder. But this is what is going on with Saul and his jealousy of David. And if you're not familiar, here's sort of the short version of the story of Saul. Saul is the very first king of Israel. And he was handpicked by God. God said, this is the guy I want to rule Israel. And then later, after Saul's sin, God decides to reject Saul. And then he chooses David in his place. And so instead of letting the rule of Israel pass down through Saul's line, God interrupts that, and he introduces David into the equation. Says, David is going to be the one who rules my people. Now, you probably already know David. This is David and Goliath David. This is, this passage that I just read is sort of the welcome home parade. After David kills Goliath, then they come home on this victory march, and the women come out, and they're singing this song. So when Saul says in verse 8, next they'll be making him the king, That's exactly what's going to happen. And that's a little bit of clever foreshadowing from the people who wrote all this down to kind of clue you in, like, this is the trajectory that we're going. So as the story goes, Saul's jealousy of David causes him to lash out, and we have this meltdown in spectacular fashion. And Saul just could not let this go. His jealousy became fear, and his fear became an obsession to trap, trick, and kill David. In 1 Samuel 18:28 it says, when Saul realized that the Lord was with David and that his daughter Michal loved David, Saul became still more afraid of him, and he remained his enemy the rest of his days. And then the scripture goes on to describe the downfall of Saul and David's rise to the throne. That's sort of the book of 1 Samuel. That's kind of the whole theme. But that's not the only place we find jealousy in the Bible. It's kind of all over. In Genesis chapter 4, the first murder in Scripture is because of jealousy. Cain becomes jealous when God favors Abel's offering over his. And in a fit of envy, he kills his brother. Jealousy is in play in Sarah and Hagar. Sarah becomes jealous of Hagar after Hagar conceives Abraham's child. This jealousy leads to harsh treatment and eventual exile for Hagar and Ishmael, and then they would go on to be the Arab people, direct ancestors of the Prophet Muhammad, who founded Islam. That all started jealousy. Joseph, you remember Joseph and the coat of many colors? Joseph's brothers were jealous of the favoritism that he receives from their father and of his prophetic dreams, and so they capture him and they sell him into slavery, all because they're jealous. This even comes into play with Jesus. Pilate, who is the Roman governor who sentenced Jesus to die, he recognized that the chief priests handed Jesus over out of envy. Their jealousy of Jesus' influence and popularity plays a key role in his crucifixion. And then in some of Paul's writings, in 1 Corinthians chapter 3, he rebukes the Corinthians for jealousy and quarreling, pointing out that these are signs of spiritual immaturity. So in the scriptures, jealousy is almost always portrayed as destructive. It divides families, it fuels rebellion, and it leads to sin. I like this quote from Proverbs chapter 27. It says, anger is cruel and fury is overwhelming, but who can stand before jealousy? And I think that's a great question. Who can stand against jealousy? Apparently, nobody. Nobody can stand against jealousy. Jealousy is I would call it a core human experience. It's something that we will all have, we'll all have that in our life. From the beginning, our desire to belong to something or to some group of people has made us vulnerable to comparison. We start to believe that, boy, if I just had more status, or if I had a little more influence or more possessions, if I was just a little bit more with the in crowd, then I would be more fulfilled, I would be more secure, maybe I would even be more loved. But that's a trap. That's a trap, because if you get a little bit more, there's always somebody who's got a little bit more than that. And if you get that, there'll always be another person that's got just a little bit more. And jealousy kind of causes us to see people as competition rather than community. Paul would call jealousy an act of the flesh. In Galatians 5, he wrote, the acts of the flesh, they're obvious. They include hatred, discord, jealousy, fits of rage, selfish ambition, dissension, factions, and envy. It's a core experience. We all will know jealousy in our life. So what should we do about that? Is there anything we can do about that? I think so. If you're taking notes, this would be number one. First thing we're going to have to do is to start taking jealousy seriously. We just have to take it more seriously. Most of the jealousy that I experience, it feels harmless, right? Like it feels like walking and seeing big houses and going, gosh, that's cool. I wonder what it would be like to live there. Last summer, I went to a car show with Michelle and her family, and we always have a lot of fun going to those. Michelle's father-in-law or stepfather has a couple of cars that he likes to enter in the shows. So it's not unusual for us to hang around these things. But at this one last year, someone had a DeLorean. You know a DeLorean, the Back to the Future car? Man, that is so cool. And very rarely do you get a chance to see one up close. And I was just mesmerized by this car. I just think it's so cool. And so I was just hovering around this car for probably 10 or 15 minutes. I wanted to sit in it. They had it blocked off. They wouldn't even let you sit. I wanted to sit in it. I wanted to drive it. A little bit I wanted to take it home. That would be great. And then when we were done, we just moved on. Nothing happened. You know, I didn't scratch it up going, well, if I can't have it, you can't have it either. You know, it wasn't anything like that. I didn't melt down. I didn't obsess over it. I didn't ruminate. There was no problem. It was just a harmless bit of jealousy, right? But if you apply that harmless bit of jealousy to another thing in your life, and then another, then I think what happens is I spot a problem on the horizon, because not anything grand has happened to throw me off the rails, but there's this creeping desire that does very little harm, but it draws me away from finding my identity fulfilled in something better, in more specifically in God's love and his provision. In her novel Middlemarch, George Eliot, this is George Eliot, well, that's her pen name anyway, she explores the themes of human emotion and self-awareness, and she said this, which I think speaks to the harmless kind of jealousy we experience in everyday life. She wrote, "There is a sort of jealousy which needs very little fire. It is hardly a passion, but a blight bred in the cloudy, damp despondency of uneasy egoism." That's taking jealousy a little more seriously. In other words, there's a kind of jealousy that isn't a strong passion like love or hate, but a subtle, insidious emotion that doesn't require a significant provocation to manifest. And since everyday jealousy isn't a strong emotion, it sort of flies under the radar, and we don't think we need to take that seriously. But if we do decide to take that seriously, here's some things we can try. You don't need to rearrange your whole life in order to deal with this, but maybe there's a few things that we can do to help keep this subtle jealousy in check, okay? So this would be number 2 if you're taking notes. We're going to have to stem the flow of constant comparison. Stem the flow, constant comparison. One of the pitfalls of our increasingly digital lives is our consumption of social media. Now, I'm going to rail on social media for just a minute here, so this has lately become a little bit of a hobby horse for me. If you're not on social media, good for you. Stay away. Just don't do it. Trust me, don't do it. But for the rest of us, I think we should look at this a little more honestly about how social media is sort of a breeding ground for endless comparison and jealousy. People put the best version of themselves online, right? That's what you see when you check out social media. We tend to share the most polished, shareable parts of our lives, and we're constantly taking in the highlight reels of others who are doing the same. Or maybe we just don't engage, we just sort of lurk, you just sort of observe, and you don't want to engage because you feel like your life does not measure up to what you're seeing. This is the perfect environment for jealousy to start to take root. A constant comparison might not lead to an emotional meltdown, but it quietly pulls us away from feeling content, bit by bit, until we're no longer at peace with the life that we actually have. Now, this is especially troubling for teens and kids. You may have heard of this book, The Anxious Generation by Jonathan Haidt. He summarizes why social media is so detrimental to the mental health of teen girls in particular. He writes, visually oriented social media platforms that focus on images of oneself are ideally suited to pushing down a girl's sociometer that internal gauge of where one stands in relation to others. Girls are also more likely to develop socially prescribed perfectionism in which a person tries to live up to impossibly high standards held by others, by society. And that's not happening by accident. Social media is literally hacking our sense of worth by overexposing us to standards of life that are always just out of reach. In other words, social media is keeping us in a perpetual state of baseline jealousy. Perhaps nobody knows the power of jealousy more than marketers and advertisers. Who here has Instagram? Anybody have Instagram? Yeah, a handful of people. There's a lot of ads on Instagram, right? Like you see, here's a post from my friend Emily. Here's a post from my wife. Here's some shoes I need to buy. Oh, here's another, here's something from the church. Here's a tent. Ooh, it has a new feature. I didn't know about that. For a long time, my Instagram account had no ads on it. I don't know how this happened, but I must have been like a control group. They have to know how effective ads are. And so they have to have a group that sees no ads to see how people who do have ads, how they interact and engage. So for years, no ads. I thought Instagram was the best. I mean, this is awesome. You get all this social media, no ads, and then one day they cut that off. And I'm like, this is ridiculous. There's ads everywhere. What is going on? And Michelle's like, yeah, hello, where have you been? That's how Instagram is. And I'm like, not mine. And pretty soon, I'm really interested in all the things that it's showing me that now I think I need. New kitchen knives and new camping equipment and, whatever. And you may feel like you are immune to advertising because you see it so much. You feel like, well, I'm just ignoring it at this point. I don't even see it anymore. But I think we need to be more active. I think that's naive. And I think we need to be more active in keeping our jealous tendencies sort of in check. So maybe that means that we reject free services that come at the cost of being able to blast you with endless advertising. Maybe it means paying for the ad-free version of your favorite programming. Maybe it's time to unsubscribe from a few things. All the companies that send you the best deal of your whole life is today. It was yesterday, but now it's also today. Or, they email you once a week, all that stuff. Maybe it's time to just ditch all of that. It's going to be fine. I promise you can cut yourself off from this. If you miss the 4th of July sale, there'll be another one next year. Maybe it means to turn off your screens altogether and do what the kids say and go touch grass. Are you familiar with that? Just means go outside, I guess. I don't know. Go touch grass. To advertisers, your attention is money in their pocket. To God, your attention is what your worship is. I want to divert my attention away from those who profit from it and more towards the one to whom it is due. So I think a good way to combat jealousy is to just stop giving so much airtime to people who want to exploit your desire to belong for the sake of making their clients and themselves wealthy. So maybe one simple thing we can do is just cut a little bit of that out of our life. Number 3, another thing we can do is engage in spiritual practices that reverse the effects of jealousy. We did a short teaching series just before this one about prayer. And an idea that keeps coming back to me as I think about prayer is that prayer is not just making requests to God and then seeing how he responds, waiting for an answer. When we pray, when we're engaged in prayer, we are actively changing ourselves too. It puts us in step with the Spirit of God. When we practice mindfulness or meditation, when we come to worship, when we engage in prayer, whenever we do those things, we're sort of tuning our hearts to the heartbeat of God. If we engage in study, if we engage in almsgiving, we are giving our faith a way that changes our perspective of the world. And if we never do these things, then I think the default is just what the default is. Actions of the flesh. Hatred, discord, jealousy, fits of rage, selfish ambition, dissension, factions, and envy. And that was just a portion of Paul's list. Paul wrote, those who belong to Christ Jesus have crucified the flesh with its passions and desires. Since we live by the Spirit, let us keep in step with the Spirit. Let us not become conceited, provoking, and envying each other. I think when we keep jealousy in check, what ends up filling that space is contentment, joy, and gratitude. It's appropriate to recognize someone is blessed, if someone is beautiful, someone is skillful, someone is hardworking. I think we can recognize that, and we can do it without giving over to jealousy. My dad, he rides a motorcycle. He's got a Harley, cool, loud bike, Yeah, there he is. He didn't buy the motorcycle. He won the motorcycle in a contest. And this is him sitting on the motorcycle that he won. They didn't give him that one. They had to build him one for him. Yeah, it's really cool. But he won it in a sweepstakes. My dad's a pastor, and someone who worked at the church came into his office. He said, "Tim, I was just at Burger King, and they had a drawing for a Harley-Davidson motorcycle. I think you should enter." And the way my dad tells it is, when the luckiest person you know tells you to fill out a form to win something, you don't ask questions, you just do it. So he fills out the form, they turn it in, whatever. Months go by, and everybody just forgets about it. And one day, somebody calls the house on the phone. My mom answers. And, these folks, they talk so fast. "Congratulations, you're the winner," which if somebody says that on the phone, you're about to get scammed, right? "Congratulations, you're the winner. You're a finalist in a drawing for a free Harley-Davidson motorcycle. You have to go to this race that they're having, and you'll draw a ticket when you get there, and you might win. You're one of 6 finalists or something like that." And she's like, "Okay, sure." And she hung up and thought it was just telemarketer. So she called my dad, and he'd forgotten too, so he was just like, whatever, just telemarketer. And then he was like, "Even if it's not, I don't have time to do that. I don't want to go pick up those tickets." It's kind of felt like this is a hassle. And then the more he thought about it, he was like, "Wait a second. I remember I signed up to win a this is legit. Quick, call them back." Okay, so they call him back, and in order to win, he had to pick up complimentary tickets to the NHRA National Championship at Lucas Oil Raceway. I don't know what any of that means. But apparently that's a drag race, and that's a big deal. And during that event, after something hilariously called Crackle Fest, again, I'm not sure what that is. This is just, he's telling me the story. He and the other finalists made their way to the center infield, and they had a motorcycle helmet with envelopes in it, and one of those is the winning ticket. And so they all pull them out, and they're opening their tickets. He said, "Tyler, I drank so much caffeine that day that I kind of wasn't really there. I was there, but I wasn't really there. And I was holding my ticket. I was just staring at it. And I didn't say anything. I just didn't even know what I was looking at. And the person next to him is shaking him. "You won, you won, you won." And he won. And so they put him on this motorcycle, and they snapped a photo. And apparently they didn't tell him where to look when they snapped the photo, but he had the winning ticket, and it was great. And when he called to tell us, "You guys won't believe this, I won a motorcycle," we were thrilled. So exciting. My dad always wanted to have a Harley. And my dad's a preacher, and so, growing up, we didn't have a lot. And I remember in his sermons, he would sometimes talk about how cool it would be to have a Harley. And I remember specifically one time him saying, "I would never have a Harley unless I won one." He's just sort of like, unless the impossible happened. So for us, we knew that was like a dream come true. And that was just so wild. And when he won that motorcycle, I was so excited. I felt like I had won that motorcycle. I was like, "This is amazing. Yes, we won." A victory for the Hughes household just felt great. His joy and excitement was our joy and excitement. And what if, instead of jealousy, that was how we went about life? Your victory is my victory. This is a victory. This is a win for our family. It wasn't, oh man, he won a motorcycle. I wanted a motorcycle too. There's none of that. The end goal is we learn to share in the abundance and beauty and blessing that God gives someone, even if it's someone else. Because when God blesses somebody else, it is a reminder that God also blesses us. I didn't win the motorcycle that day, but God has a blessing around the corner for me, and someone else's blessing is my blessing. Someone else's victory will someday be my victory. And that's not selfish. It's a way to say, we share. We share in this. God is not just up in heaven waiting for history to play itself out. He is always creating, always blessing, always loving. And that includes all of us. So remember your piece of paper? Your thing that you wrote down that you're jealous of? How's that looking up there right now? I wrote down a well-manicured lawn. And after all this talk on jealousy, that just feels so pathetic to me. That just feels so pathetic. Why would I be jealous of that? I have so many wonderful, great things in my life. To zero in on someone's hard work and say, why can't that be me? That's not even worth the time it takes to think it. Actually, a beautiful lawn shouldn't even evoke jealousy. It should evoke wonder and thankfulness and contentment. It should be an inspiration of someone else's hard work and creative vision. So we're going to extend this exercise. So get your paper back out, get your pen back out. You should have plenty of blank space here. I want you to write down a couple of things in that blank space that represent how God has blessed you. Write down 3 things or 2 things or whatever that you are thankful for. The things that maybe you're most thankful for. How has God blessed you? What are you grateful for? What are the things that bring you contentment? And then underneath that, I want you to write down Psalm 23. Psalm 23. Put that on there. Psalm 23 begins with this famous line. The Lord is my shepherd. I have all that I need. The Lord is my shepherd. I have all that I need. Let's say that together. The Lord is my shepherd. I have all that I need. One more time. The Lord is my shepherd. I have all that I need. Dennis is going to play a song called Psalm 23. Surely goodness, surely mercy. The Lord is my shepherd. I have all that I need.